What's your favorite food? Mine is pizza, and I'm wagering a guess that at least half the people where I live would answer the same. This is my tried and true grandma style pizza recipe, and I love it. I love it so much that I'll even take out the food scale to measure it. You'll need 555 grams of flour. You could use double O pizza flour or you could use all purpose flour. You need 360 grams of water that's around 90 degrees. After that, you're going to need 7 grams of instant yeast, or 2¼ teaspoons of instant yeast, or 1 envelope packet of instant yeast. They're all the same. You're going to add in 2 teaspoons of salt, a teaspoon of sugar, and a healthy glug of olive oil, probably around a tablespoon or so. I use a stand mixer for this recipe. I suppose you could use a wooden spoon and a bowl to mix it, or maybe more like a hand mixer. I haven't tried it, so I don't know. Once I get all those ingredients in the bowl, I give it a little head start using the dough hook to just quickly mix it together. And then I put it on medium low until the dough starts to form. And you'll see that the dough will form into a ball and start pulling away from the sides. That's how you know it's ready. It only takes maybe a minute or two. This glass container is the perfect container for how I make pizza dough. So if I make one crust, I might as well make a bunch of crusts because I have the equipment out and this is a freezable recipe. So the reason I like these so much is their size. They are big enough to hold a portion of the pizza dough, and that helps not taking up too much space in the freezer. Plus, it's glass, which I prefer to use as much as possible. And it's square, which means it doesn't take up as much space as round containers. They're just more compact. So I really like that. This dough is a fairly wet dough, so I find a bench scraper that's curved and flexible is best. I put a little bit of olive oil in the bottom of the container, the dough, and then I top it with a little bit more olive oil. Now, the dough that you see on the right, I made about an hour ago. Then I got distracted and did something else. The dough that's on the left, I just finished making. And you can see how much the dough rose in just an hour. Now, ideally, you would take it as soon as you make it and just put it in the freezer. That way, it doesn't expand too much. Because when it expands in the container, it can push out the olive oil. It'll just make a big mess. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a container underneath it when I put it in the freezer. This one that's in the container with the blue top, I'm going to be using tomorrow. So it will go in the fridge. I'm going to put a container underneath it to catch anything that might spill out. And these are going to go in the back freezer. If I'm going to use the pizza crust in the next 2 days, I'll keep it in the fridge. But anything that I'm not going to use in 2 days always just gets put in the freezer. And then when you would like to use it, put it in the fridge overnight to let it defrost. I live in New York State in the United States of America, and I'm about an hour north of New York City. And pizza is a really big deal here. It seems like every area has foods that they specialize in and that they have a lot of opinions about. And for us here, it's pizza. Every town has multiple pizza shops, and you won't be able to stay in business unless you can make a good pizza. It's a great treat to go in there and just buy a slice or order pizza for takeout. And while I love doing that, that can really add up and become quite expensive. So I decided to try to figure out how to make it at home. This is called a grandma pie, and it's a sheet pan pizza. And so I use a well-seasoned sheet pan. I put some Pam or quick release cooking spray in the corners so it doesn't stick. And then I put some olive oil on the bottom. This dough I took out of the freezer, so it's still quite cold and it needs to come up to room temperature to rise a little bit before we start cooking it. So I treat the pan with the spray and the olive oil, and I put the dough in there and I put it on top of the oven while the oven is preheating. And now it's pizza night. So I had my nieces and nephew come over, and I knew that they love pizza, so they helped me make it. We used a 16-ounce container of mozzarella cheese and we shredded it. And now we took the dough that had been sitting out for a while, started to get soft, and we spread it so it reached all the corners of the pan, pinching closed any little holes that were created. Then we took our shredded mozzarella cheese and we spread it across the whole pizza crust. I've been making this pizza fairly frequently over the past few years, and that has helped me to come up with my version of the perfect pizza. So, first of all, what I do is I put the cheese down first. That way, the pizza sauce can sit on top and it allows the sauce to evaporate any excess moisture because I don't like if this pizza gets too wet. When I make the pizza dough, I add a little bit of sugar in there, and that helps the crust caramelize. So it gives the crust a little bit of a crispiness on the bottom, which I also like. Then I take extra sharp shredded cheddar cheese and put it along the edges. It fries up and it bubbles along the edges, and it makes it very tasty and a little extra crisp. Then, after you've done all of that, you put it on the bottom rack at 500 degrees for about 20 minutes. But make sure that you check the bottom to see when it's done because every oven's a little bit different. This is my pizza cutting board. It's an old cutting board that split many years ago, and I use it for pizza because it makes it easier to try to cut it than if it was in the pan. The nice thing about it splitting is it stores really easily. This is my tried and true pizza recipe. Whenever there's a party, this is going to be part of the main meal most of the time. I know how it will come out each time, and I'm really happy with the results. And now for the 6 questions I ask for every recipe I make. The first one is, how does it taste? And this is a good pizza. I think you'll really like it if you try to make it. The next one is it easy? And I would say yes, it's as easy as you can get for a pizza, at least in my opinion. The dough is easy to make, and once you get it onto the sheet pan, it's really easy. So while there's a few steps involved, I think it's easy. The next question is it quick? And whenever you have something with yeast, I don't really think it's that quick, but it's quick for pizza. So is it as quick as ramen noodles? No, definitely not, but it's pretty quick for pizza. The next question is, can you freeze it? And yes, you can freeze it. You can make multiple crusts and keep them in the freezer. And I find that the easiest thing to do. I'll make anywhere from 4 to 6 crusts at a time and just keep them in the freezer. The next question is, can you make it in bulk? Well, I don't really know how to answer that question. I can't cook it in bulk because my oven isn't big enough, and I just make them back to back in the stand mixer. So I guess you could say yes-ish. The final question is about cost. After my calculations, I figured out this costs $6.75, and by far the most expensive ingredient was the cheese. I can make this recipe at about a quarter of the price that I could buy it at a local pizza shop. This recipe is delicious and fun, and I hope you try it.